What's up? I'm Jay Moss, and today we're going to master a record. We're going to master a record that I mixed from stems. I did a video on this yesterday. You can go back one video, and it's called What is Stem Mastering? Watch that if you like. I think I can link it on some platforms. Other platforms, maybe not. Don't know. Like making videos, kind of new to this, hard to say. Yesterday we talked about what a stem master is. We treated all the stems. It took forever. Today we're going to master what we treated yesterday. I'm going to have it try not to gobble up my entire day. So with that in mind, let's do this. All right, here is our mix. As I said yesterday, all of these tracks, boom, 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 these all go down to our group bus. This is acting as though it's sort of our stereo fader. This is where we're going to apply our global settings, which I keep right here, to what we've done here. So all the stuff we did here, that lives on each individual track. Those inserts are here. Great. Those funnel into this, just to make this crystal clear. These settings get applied to the culmination of everything we have here. So let's go. First plugin up is Gullfoss. I've talked about this before. It's basically an intelligent AI equalization. I'm just going to let it play so that you can watch the line kind of wiggle and react. We'll talk about the settings really quickly. Basically what it does is it's going to analyze the incoming signal and it's going to make adjustments based on how dramatic you want those adjustments to be. It's easier to listen to and to look at than anything else. Let's start there.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone.
Okay, so the stuff we're seeing here, we're seeing like this big ramp that's probably around like 16K-ish or whatever. I like how it gradually ramps up. I also like how it's reacting to what's coming in. We're seeing the same thing with the low end. In the previous video, one of the main themes is you saw me do a bunch of sort of shaving of frequencies. You saw me like really making sure those hi-hats weren't too bright and really making sure that the low end was controlled and stuff. We do all of that stuff to achieve basically a balance between the individual elements. Because what would happen, right? If my hi-hats were a little bright or something was wrong, and then I start embellishing aspects of the entire mix, things are going to go crazy. It's going to limit the amount I can push things if I don't have the best balance possible. That's what yesterday's decisions were about. Now I can kind of let this plugin fly because I don't have to worry about like one specific element screwing up the whole thing. Just so you guys can hear what I'm talking about, we're going to play it again. I'll bypass it. I'll put it back on. These two settings here, recover and tame, are the two that I usually mess with the most. Maybe I'll adjust those when I put it back on. I start with tame, then I add recover. At points, I have used the brighten. On this mix, I didn't have to do that.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone. And love is just a fragile thing. A wedding ring can't hold it.
Okay, that sounds really good. Let's move on to our next plugin. This is going to be Greg Wells Mixcentric. Again, people have seen me use this in the past. Sometimes I just crank it. Let's see what I did this time. I don't actually remember.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone.
Hey, I'm proud of myself. Look, the input level is green. That's awesome. Nothing's peaking, and it's not totally cranked. That's a conservative Greg Wells Mixcentric setting for your boy.
It's not a fertile.
Okay, it's kind of yellow, but it's not red.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone.
This mix is actually a really good use for this plugin. I used it in a previous video, and one of the main things about this plugin that I don't like is that it can make electric guitars go crazy, but because this mix isn't like a big hardcore mix or something that has a lot of that, I don't have to worry quite as much about that. I think it's making a huge improvement. Hopefully what you're hearing is sort of the murk of the mix start to disappear. It brightens up in a cool way, not quite as high up as Gullfoss, but the upper mids and the high end seem to come to life without getting too irritating. There's a little bit of compression, and we're starting to squeeze in on the master now and get a little bit closer. So just like when we were prepping the stems for this master, looking for like an EQ balance, now as we're working our way towards the limiter, we're looking for sort of like dynamic balance plus some EQ expansion. Speaking of keeping things controlled, that brings us to FabFilter Pro C2. All I was really trying to do here is add a little bit of transparent glue. If you go through these different compressor styles, they sound all radically different. Clean is great if you're happy with the overall tonality, but you just want to kind of transparently sink some things into the mix. What you're going to see here is I'm doing next to no compression. It's primarily landing on the snares. It's just yet one more step to glue things together. Let's hear it.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone. And love is just a fragile thing, a wedding ring.
Did you hear how that kind of pulls things together just a little bit more? It seems subtle, but that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're intelligently stacking subtle little adjustments that culminate together to create a better product. And I think this helps tremendously. It's weird because when I first started recording, I couldn't hear compression in small increments. I could hear a lot of compression. I'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. But I really think compression is one of the hardest things for newbies to kind of figure out. But once you do, it's like keys to the castle. So next we're going to add some oomph, and we're going to control the high end just a little bit. My favorite tool for this is Pultec style EQs, the oomph-inator, if you will. We're real low here. We're down at 30 hertz boost. On a Pultec, you actually can boost and attenuate the same frequency, but because of the shape, it creates a different curve. Hold on. Since I'm not just a great audio engineer, but I'm actually an artistic genius as well, I'm going to draw you a perfectly to scale iteration of what I mean by boosting and cutting at the same frequencies and what that kind of looks like. Prepare to have your minds blown. Okay, let's go. Boom. Here's a box, and here's everything you can hear. This is 20 hertz. That's really low. And this is 20K. Wow, I have good handwriting. Cool. This is 0. This line represents no change in volume whatsoever. Cool. Up is louder, down is lower. Now let's grab red because I'm an artist. Okay, and so what would we say? We boosted at 30 hertz. So when we create a shelf boost at 30, we're basically saying, all right, boost at 30 and start rolling off and cool, and then the rest just stays on this line. All right. Yeah, I'm a Pultec. But then let's use the orange. But when we boost and cut with different shapes, we're basically doing the boost part, and then we're like psych, and we cut sort of like this. Like I said, feel free to screenshot this. This is a perfect representation of what a Pultec EQ does, and more or less how to think of them. So if you were to do 60 hertz or 100 hertz or 20 hertz, you would just move that concept a little further up in the frequency spectrum or a little bit further back. You're welcome. All right, with that beautiful nugget of knowledge, let's listen to it with it on. I'll take it off. I'll put it back on.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone. And love.
So for me, that's an enormous impact. Hopefully you're listening on something that can hear those frequencies, but if you are on a nice system, you should really hear how the whole mix starts to hold way better. And you didn't realize how thin it was until you didn't have it. And then you're like, oh, I need that. Okay, in our next step, I'm going to use multi-band compression. I'm going to define the overall shape of the mix using this, but I'm going to do it where it flexes with the input signal, or in this case, the song. So what you're going to see is you're going to see 4 different regions. Oh, let me do it in the way you're going to see it. I have to do it backwards for the camera. You're going to see low end, low mid-range, high mid-range, and then high end. But you're also going to see this yellow line, and it's going to represent the shape that I kind of want. In this case, I'm going to control those lows that I just pushed into the mix. I'm going to add some warmth in the low mid-range, and then we're going to slope down to reality, kind of leave the rest of the mix where it was when it comes to high mid-range and high end, because that's starting to sound really good. Here we go. As advertised, 4 regions: low, low mid, high end. Let's hit spacebar.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone.
This gives the mix both shape and control, because each zone is going to bounce in time with its specific elements. Like for instance, let's solo this really low end stuff you can't hear on your phone.
They just pick.
Right? That's bouncing with the kick drum. Let's see what's in the low mid range.
Not a fertile world.
Our biggest bounces there are with the snare. We're probably gonna hear some vocal up here.
It's not a fertile world. They just.
Okay, and my space, my hi-hats, atmospheric stuff, the expensive frequencies, those live up here. You see that's bouncing most with a hi-hat. It's weird, right? I have like instrument control, even though I'm just dealing with the bounce of the entire product. Now let's just real quick, we'll run it again, we'll turn it off, we'll turn it back on.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone.
So I was looking for what comes next, and I had an instance of FabFilter Pro Q3, and I was like, okay, I must have decided that I still needed to do some different adjustments on top of all the adjustments I just made. I must have pulled up that instance by habit, but I didn't need it, so it's awesome. So we can clear that one out. Here it is. Hi, I'm not using you, so I'm gonna delete you. Sorry. Is this really gonna be a master where I don't use FabFilter Pro Q3? That's something that's not usual at all, but that's cool. That means we did our job right everywhere else. Maybe that's a function of this being a stem master. Obviously I use Pro Q3 all over the place on the other elements. We balanced those so well that when I got to this point, I was like, well, I guess we're good. Okay, we're almost there. What would a master be without a little bit of tape emulation? This particular tape emulation is the Waves J37 tape machine. It comes in the Abbey Road bundle, I think. I have a setting that I really like. I basically keep most of the knobs just where they are, listen to the sound of the tape machine, and then I just sort of push in more saturation. It doesn't take a lot. What saturation kind of does is, for lack of a better term, is it makes it feel like the mix came forward. So I think we'll hear that here in a second. I'll overdo it so you can hear the crank. We'll roll it back and then we'll turn it off and you'll kind of hopefully hear the thing. It's a subtle difference, but I think a really important difference.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone.
All right, now let's really crank it so you can hear what it does.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack.
Okay, that obviously introduces horrible distortion if you overdo it. We're gonna put it back and then we'll bypass again. Now that you've got an ear for it, hopefully you can hear what I'm talking about. It's subtle, I just think it's cool.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone.
Okay, I mean, that's basically the master. This last piece is kind of boring. It's just our limiting. I love FabFilter Pro L2. That whole bundle is amazing. If you can't tell, I pretty much swear by it. So in this version of Pro L, we're just gonna make sure that our oversampling set to 4x. I like the modern preset as a starting point for stuff like this. It can get things to a nice, like, modern radio volume, but some of those other, like, aggressive presets for a composition like this would just be too overbearing. This is a nice middle ground. I'll show you what I mean now. We're just gonna pull the fader down and we're gonna put it back up and we're gonna find our average volume that we like and then we print this thing and then we're done.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone until we crack like stone. And love is just a fragile thing. A wedding ring can't hold it. And everything is so empty. Everything is down.
Okay, so when I'm working on a limiter like this, I try to get my verses, the quieter passages, somewhere around -10 RMS, and then my choruses can hit, 8 or 9 at the loudest. That's about where I like to live. I try to make sure it's mostly transient response in here, and if I did my job right, it should sound way better when we turn it on.
It's not a fertile world. They just pick the bone.
All right, guys, we did it. That's the full mastering process. That's the full chain. This video took me way less time than yesterday. I feel really good about myself. I can actually finish everybody else's mix revisions. With that, I'm Jay Moss. I hope you learned something. Go out there, try stuff out, become great, awesome, wonderful audio engineer people, or don't, or just sit on YouTube like I do and watch stuff that you'll never do. All right, adios. Bye.
I will be gold.